Oh my gosh, look, you can see my dog. Kyla's still having a nap time while I'm filming today, and she hasn't really wanted to pop up and say hi, but she's there, and you can see her pretty little ears. So here's what we're chatting about today. I fear that migraine makes me a terror to live with, and I am so fortunate to have a significant other that is very understanding and receptive to some of the drama that I bring to the table as a migrainey person. If you're new here, my name's Casey. I am chatting about all things living with migraine here and giving you some insights, stories, suggestions, and hopefully giving you some connection with your journey with migraine. So I would love if you subscribed and we could continue chatting about all things migraine. So my significant other that I alluded to earlier, we have been high school sweethearts for like a million years. So we have been together a very long time, and we are super duper low drama. Like, we don't have a lot of like arguments essentially. I've discovered that whenever I start getting very like jabby at him and very like short with him and start picking fights, it's almost every single time because of a migraine attack. Like, it actually turns out that irritability is a symptom that I get with every attack, and I didn't discover it until I was living with my significant other, and he pointed out that like this seems to be a pattern. And then in hindsight, it's like, yeah, that's really obvious. So anyway, I'm gonna tell you a story. Recently, this actually happens a lot, but this was a very specific story. Like, this pattern of events is a very frequently occurring thing, but this is just a specific occurrence of it. So recently, Dan came home from work, and from the moment he walked in the door, I was pissed off. I was so mad for whatever reason, and I was sure it was his fault. I was sure he did something to annoy me. I was sure that he was just like, you know, I don't even really know anymore. And this lasted from the moment he walked into the door until we were like done eating dinner. Like, I was bickering with him nonstop. He hadn't actually done anything wrong. All he did was come home, and I was being a monster. So he was checking in with me gently, of course, not like saying, oh, does your head hurt? Like, he was just like, hey, like, what's up? And I brushed it off. I was like, actually, no, like, my head's fine. I'm symptom free. You're just like the problem right now. And I brushed it off, and obviously it didn't land with me that that was a possibility. Anyway, as we clean up after dinner, I suddenly realized, like, oh no, my head really hurts. I'm feeling all of the migrainey symptoms right now. This is actually very embarrassing. So I snuck away to go take a painkiller, and I'm like laughing to myself, like, this is so absurd that I didn't accept this earlier. And anyway, as I come back out into the main area where he's like washing dishes and everything, I'm just boldly saying, I believe an apology is in order, and he just like rolled his eyes like, obviously. So anyway, that's kind of what happened. And yes, I was at the problem all night and being a terror to live with, like I said at the beginning, but he takes it very well because he knows that it is not me, it is the migraine talking. Even though I denied it, I did come to the realization that he was right later on. Things like this can make relationships with migraine kind of a little bit more tricky and difficult, but luckily, if you find the right person, you find the right tools, and find the right way to communicate about these things, it doesn't have to be an issue. And it really isn't for us. Like I said, this happens all the time, but because we have such a good low drama foundation, and we know that whenever I start acting really crazy, it's almost always migraine, that really helps for our relationship to know that that's what's going on. Now, I'll link to a related article that I wrote all about this particular story, and like suggestions for people that are in a relationship with migraine and how to communicate with your significant other and all of that, but I want to make sure that I include some of it in this video. So first of all, like, not putting it all on the other person, knowing your own patterns. Like, yes, it isn't your fault that migraine is happening, that you're having an attack, and that you are having the symptom of being very irritable, but being able to be aware of your own personal migraine routine, like not routine, but patterns and what symptoms do come up, and being aware of that is super duper important. And it's going to be an always evolving thing. Like, I didn't notice until I moved in with Dan that I get irritable with my attacks, even though I always have been. Looking back, it was so obvious, but I didn't become aware of it until so many years into my experience with migraine. So you're always going to be learning new things along the way, but trying to become more aware so you're able to catch on to them and know when migraine is at play is so helpful. Even though I did discover that irritability is such a common symptom for me, obviously sometimes I still miss it. Like, in this story, I still like was not accepting that that was what was going on until it became impossible to ignore later on. I don't know about anyone else, but for me, when I realized that I'm feeling irritable because I have a migraine attack, it's very easy for me to not direct that irritability at somebody else. Whenever that's my instinct and I realize, like, no, it's actually just migraine, then it's very easy for me to redirect those thoughts. Like, it becomes so much easier to not take things out on my loved ones once I know that it's migraine. So I don't know if everyone's gonna have that experience, but it's something that I've experienced, and it has been super helpful. Now, my general communication tips for people that are in a couple, what? Communication tips for couples where somebody has migraine or both of you have migraine is making sure that you're facing this as a couple, a partnership, a unit, and neither one of you is like the bad guy. Migraine is the bad guy. Like trying to separate, it's not you versus them, it's the two of you facing this issue together. That perspective shift is super important when you're able to come together and realize that the particular issue is neither one of your faults. And honestly, sometimes when I'm feeling irritable with a migraine attack and I am being like really extra and my fiance is aware of this, we can kind of play off of it and it can become kind of a fun little thing to like be very negative in a playful way and not necessarily fighting with each other, just kind of like joking about it. I can't think of a good example for that, but I just know that that's something that does happen pretty often. Now, the other kind of suggestion I have, this is more my peeps with migraine, which is probably you if you're watching this. I have a lot of internalized stigma and shame around chatting about my migraine. Obviously not in this context, but like in my real life, for some reason it's hard for me to talk about. So something that's really helped me start expressing these types of things to people in my immediate circle is using kind of coded language, which just essentially means saying the thing without using the exact words, because I am like, for some reason, terrified to say, I have a migraine attack. Like for some reason that's very hard for me to say. So now I have a lot of other ways to say that and communicate that. The important thing is that the person you're talking to needs to obviously know that that's what you mean, but it can be a game changer. So some of the things that I say instead of I have a migraine attack is just like, I feel off, or I feel pretty icky, or I don't feel so good. All of these things almost every time means migraine. Like if I feel sick, I'm gonna say that instead. Like that's kind of the context there. Or I might get very specific about talking about a symptom I'm experiencing. Like if I'm seeing visual aura, I might say that because that's a way to communicate like, hey, something's like happening and I want you to be on the same page as me and know what I'm going through, so you don't have to read my mind and know that I'm having a migraine attack. And my fiance, my significant other, does not have the same hesitancy to talking about migraine that I do. So he's much more direct. He'll just ask like, how's your head today? Like, do you have a migraine attack today? Like he'll just come out and ask that word for word, and that's fine. That works for me. So if you like it, make sure you check the description and I'll share some goodies along the way there, some freebies, some related articles, and tools, whatever I find for you. And if you enjoyed this, make sure you hit like and subscribe and we can keep chatting about migraine together. Okay, see you next time.